Good morning, all. Welcome to another History with R&R Live, and as always, sitting in the co-chair seat, Jeff Franklin. How are we doing this morning?
Oh, we're doing pretty good here. How about you, Robert? What's going
Not too
on?
bad, not too bad. So, before I do my normal shout out to people in chat, I just want to address one thing. Bird, I'm not late. If you check the thing, it's 11:05. Because as Mr. CCTV will tell you, I'm an a-hole like that, and I always go 5 minutes past the hour. Just hang out to karaoke, and you'll know. Um, I
That's
always go
just the way
five
he
past the
rolls.
hour because I'm weird. So not late, on time, haha. Um, so quick run through the chat. Say hello to everybody before we get rolling here. Question of Trek. Good morning, sir. Game Hammer Classic Gaming. Welcome. Bird of Prey 5 Kapla. And sorry to hear about your grandmother. I hope everything is well,
Yeah.
and my thoughts and prayers to you and your family. Professor Brainy Specs, of course. Mary's Game Room, welcome. John DeMarco, welcome. Thomas Potts, welcome. Mr. CCTV, Commodore Ty. Mountains of Elysium, welcome. Hope you're doing well this morning or afternoon, whichever one it is. I think it's afternoon or late evening, one of the two, over there on the Emerald Isles. Um, but and what do you know? The bot's actually working this morning. What do you know? They didn't go on strike.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, that's always
Uh,
a good thing. So
I
before
also
we
want
get
to,
rolling with today's topic, just a couple of. Go ahead.
if I may, Robert, I want to
Yeah.
thank Yitza Lemons. He did some great artwork for me recently for History with R&R, and I'm going to turn off my webcam so you can see it. Uh, So he drew me as a 1940s reporter with a microphone there and some historical events going on. He did it in black and white, and I think he did just a fabulous job. He always does a great job. So I want to thank
Yeah, he's
you for
awesome.
doing that.
He
Thank you, sir. You're you're the best.
Yes, Yitzy is awesome. If you ever get a chance to say hi to him, make sure you do. And welcome, not Ryan Johnson. So, just a quick little thing. I touched on this on karaoke night, although I know some of you in weren't at karaoke to hear this. So I'm just gonna quickly brush over this. It's just a little cosmetic thing I have to get to. Um, both history with R&R and Rambling Canuck. I have. A whole bunch of stuff planned for it. I may be taking a step back for a while. It all depends on how this week goes. Last week, my doctor informed me that my creatinine levels are getting to the indicator levels of a kidney shutdown. This week, I go in for more tests. I'll know by next Monday. Just where we're sitting, whether it's still in capability of being medication wise, or if we're looking at dialysis. I only say this because I'm trying to be as open as I can. This isn't panic stage yet, but I'm just trying to keep everybody informed. So keep your fingers crossed that it's not reached dialysis yet, um, but it is on the radar. So I just kind of wanted to let everybody know so that if I go away for a week or two, everybody kind of understands. Um, Again, it's not to panic or oh, woe is me, but just more of a kind of an update and let everybody know so that if all of a sudden I do drop off for a little while, it's because I got bad news on Monday. So with that said, I do want to thank everyone that bought a Doom mug last month. Greatly appreciate that. The Doom mug has been taken off the store as of May 1st, but everything else, the shirts, the cups, and everything with History with R&R is still there, as well as all the Rambling Canuck stuff. And yeah, so today's topic, getting to the fun stuff and the meat and the bones of this thing,
I just
was
want to
dropping.
echo John DeMarco. Thoughts and prayers do go out to you, Robert.
Thank you.
We're hoping for the
Um,
best there.
yeah, that's the main thing. So, today's topic was dropping the nuke in 45 worth it? What's your initial thoughts when somebody says that? What's your initial before we get into all the what was going on and what could have happened if they didn't?
Well, my initial thoughts were that it was a good thing because it was going to save millions of lives, not only Americans trying to invade mainland Japan, but also Japanese, because they were going to fight to the death. They were going to fight every inch of territory, and they just weren't going to stop.
Yeah, and I tend to share that opinion. Now there is the opinion that the United States never should have dropped the bomb, which I think is a bunch of malarkey. And we'll get to why I say that. Because it's one thing to just say no, they should have dropped the bomb. It's another thing to kind of, but I like it when you have something to say other than yes, because the bomb being dropped was historically a game changer. It was one of those game changing moments. It changed the position of power. It changed how wars would be fought going forward. But at the same time, it really did bring World War II to an end. And yes, the loss of life in both Nagasaki and Hiroshima were bad. But comparatively speaking, those were low numbers as to what would have actually happened had the United States and Russia, because what we like to forget is while the nukes are being dropped, right before that, the Soviet Union had just started its invasion of Japan.
That's right. They were
They
starting to invade Manchuria.
yeah, they were starting to come in through China, and they were starting to push back the Japanese. So not only do you risk men and women of Canada, Britain, United States if you go into the mainland of Japan, but also, as we find out with hindsight 2020, the Russians don't like giving up the property they take during wartime.
No,
and the last thing we want is Russia to have control of mainland China, which would have been what would have happened.
And eventually part of Japan, I'm sure.
Yeah. There would have been a lot more. There would have been a lot more death, and there would have been a lot more land for the Soviet Union. And we would have had a different world coming out of World War II. So, I mean, on one hand, you wouldn't have had communist China, but you would have had communist China in the other sense that they would have been USSR China, which they technically were. I mean, let's face it. Mao and Stalin were pretty close at the hip after World War II. But with that said, yeah. So I mean, overall, the body count was less.
Well, Mountains of Elysium mentions 5 million plus civilian lives were projected to die. They were prepared to sacrifice up to 28 million.
Yeah, the Japanese,
yeah. Of civilian lives.
Yeah, never mind the military, just civilians. And I mean, if Okinawa or any of the other islands shows us what a mainland battle would have been like, I mean, they had a lot in reserve. They held off the Kaitan, which is your kamikaze submarine. They held off a lot of planes, and the planes weren't to do dogfights. The planes were for kamikaze.
Yes.
they held back a lot of material and men just for that cause. And let's face it, you don't need to train a pilot. All you need to do is train them how to take off. I think what they do is they go to the Krogan air school. And,
I was just thinking that.
I'm sorry, Bert. I had to. And they don't even need to learn how to land.
Well, they don't in Kuroga.
But on a serious note, so basically, the argument to this day, and it is an argument. If you go into historical circles, the argument is that Japan wanted to surrender. That's the argument. There was basically this the argument is that Japan, through back channels, was trying to surrender before the nukes. The problem was that Japan and its leaders saw what happened in Germany and saw the Nuremberg trials and etc. And the biggest sticking point for the Japanese was that the Emperor Hirohito could not be a criminal, couldn't be a war criminal. So the problem with an unconditional surrender is you put that at risk. Is that the emperor being, taken away in cuffs and put in jail, and it's just not a good look. Historically, it didn't happen. Hirohito was left as a figurehead. While MacArthur and the United States ran the Japanese government afterwards, but Hirohito was left in as a puppet, as a figurehead. And it was to gain the support of the Japanese people. But the fear with this particular theory is that if they had only said that Hirohito was going to be, left out of the trials and, yada, 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 that Japan would have surrendered. And I don't buy it. I've looked at this a lot. The politicians, like Thomas Potts says here, Thomas Potts says the Japanese military never wanted to surrender. The Japanese politicians wanted to. And that is correct. The problem is the military had the power at the time. The military had the power, politicians did not. So I don't see them surrendering in 45. Maybe 46, 47, but not 45.
Well, the other thing to think about is they were projecting widespread famine in Japan.
Yes.
If there was an invasion. So the politicians were thinking of that as well.
Yeah. Well, politician always looks for their backside, right?
And, oh, yeah.
Yeah. Whereas military, not so much. So the argument is that because, as time has gone on, documents have leaked, that there was conversation in the back channels between Japan and the United States, mainly between the politician branch and the United States. But the sticking point was unconditional surrender. And
the Japanese were trying to get the Russians involved in that too. They were trying to go through the Russians to get the peace treaty, and that fell apart when Russia invaded Manchuria.
That fell apart because, like in the early war, with Russia pushing the Allies to create a second front, after Germany, even before Germany fell, the Allies were pushing Russia to start the second front in Japan. And Stalin, of course, took his time and dragged his heels. And then he finally, in 45, did start invading China. from mainland Russia, which then put even more pressure to end the war. Because as it is a good thing for the Second Front, it is also a bad thing when you consider that, as I said at the beginning of this, the Soviet Union were not known for giving back their territory they took during the war.
Well,
You know,
they like that land.
no, it was like, well, this is now ours. It's
Mhm.
now happily part of the USSR, and so the very real fact of most of China becoming part of the USSR was something that a lot of Allied generals and people of power were not all that thrilled about. So the war had to come to an end. Um, so when the nukes are dropped, I mean, the way the nukes were dropped was interesting. Because there was 5 cities during the war, and I can't remember them all off the top of my head, but those 5 cities were marked no bomb zones. And this is where people of the ilk of do not drop the bomb get a lot of their brownie points, shall we say. They were marked as no bomb zones. You couldn't bomb them. So Nagasaki, Hiroshima, and there was 3 others. And the only reason that they were marked as no bomb zones was because the nuke was in development. And when they dropped the nuke, they wanted to make sure that it was untouched area so they could properly judge the damage of said nuke. If you had carpet bombed the hell out of Nagasaki already, you can't tell what this bomb has done because Nagasaki's already going to be looking like Tokyo.
Yeah, we've been devastated.
Yeah. So then it becomes, well, what's old rubble and what's new rubble? So those 5 cities were marked as no bomb zones, and you couldn't bomb them. Bomber Command was told, no, hands off. We have something special for those. And then the nuke hit. The nuke hit Hiroshima first, Nagasaki second.
3-day gap between the two.
Yeah. And then the infamous rumor coming out of that was that the third bomb was in fact in transit for Tokyo. Because at the time, the United States only had 3. They only had 3 made. It would have taken a while to make a few more. So ready to go, they had 3. They dropped 2. And Thomas Pops is absolutely correct on this. More people died in the firebombing of Japan than the nukes. Yes. It is an overlooked statement, but yes. More people died in the firebombing of Tokyo than the people died in the actual nuclear attacks. The difference between the firebombing of Tokyo and the nuking of, let's say, Hiroshima is the residual. So people die after bombing because of said bombing. So the nuclear, the radiation sickness, the fallout. So that's your difference between the two. So the firebombing of Tokyo was bad, but once it was over, right? They could rebuild. Those still around could bury the dead, and that was that. Whereas with Nagasaki and Hiroshima, there was the fallout deaths. Mr. CCTV is bugging me because my throat is sore and I'm not pronouncing things properly. Nuclear. Yes, Mr. CCTV. Nuclear. Just remember, I will change your banner to be nuclear. But anyway, getting back to more serious stuff here. Um, and also, Mr. CCTV is correct as well. There were warnings sent out that stuff was going to this was going to happen. But until the nuke was dropped, nobody really could understand what was coming. Just give me 1 second here, Jeff, if you can.
Oh, sorry about that, folks. Robert had to step away just for a moment, but yeah. So we had the condition there where, sorry, I'm trying to get my thoughts together here. I'm sorry, Robert.
No problem, no problem. I had to cough and I didn't want to do it on thing and I hit the wrong button, so I did. So sorry about that, folks.
It's okay.
My throat went all nuts. And welcome, Rise and Shine with Purple Valkyrie. Welcome, Purple. How are you doing? Hope you're doing good. Oh, there we go. So, I mean, the long and the short of it is, in retrospect, dropping the nuke was the right decision. Now, I don't think. I think what we get is a lot of people with the hindsight football, right? When it's I compare it to football or hockey or any other sport with an armchair quarterback. Right. Well, if you'd only thrown to this guy, well, maybe the quarterback didn't see that guy, and you can because you're just sitting on the sidelines. I think we do a lot of armchair quarterbacking when it comes to stuff like this. And the fallout is what really pushed the nuclear bomb droppings to be from a positive to a negative because of how much fallout there actually was. And how many people died as a result of not just the bombing but the aftermath. So the bomb went kind of from the thing that saved lives to the thing that was dropped upon the poor Japanese, and they still suffer for 10, 15 years after. So some of it is propaganda, some of it is actual, and finding the happy medium between the two is always fun. But at the end of the day, if you stop and look at because a lot of people don't realize what an invasion of Japan would have looked like. An invasion of mainland Japan, the amount of soldiers on the Allied side, never mind the Japanese, just the Allied side alone, that would have died, outweighs anything the nukes did by far.
Well, John DeMarco mentioned earlier that if the military for Japan was really that weak, would an invasion have killed all those people? That's a good question to ask, and I'm not certain of the answer to that. I'm not sure how weak the military for Japan was at the time, but I do know that they were willing to fight to the last man. And they, like I said, they had already said that they would be willing to have up to 28 million people, civilians, die. So that's just devastating.
Yeah, and the really, I guess, interesting or scary, whichever you want to look at it. The American and the British, Canadian, that side of the Western Allies, they would always try to go with least casualties on both sides. I mean, the Japanese forced American soldiers to do some, things they'd rather not do, such as throwing a grenade into a hole because you don't know if they're going to come out with a gun or a flag. So there was a lot of that, but at the same time, the Russians, they didn't really have that kind of thought pattern. The Russians, as they proved at Stalingrad, had no problem throwing bodies for no apparent reason at a problem. They have no problem doing that. So the body count between the Japanese and the Russians would have been insane. Because they're both on that mindset. I don't care how many people I have to throw at this. We throw bodies at it till it's done. That was the Japanese's theory. That was the Russians' theory. So the body count that we know to be the body count of World War II would be a lot more horrific had the bombs not been dropped. I think we like to, like I say, we like to armchair quarterback, and we like to believe that well, if we'd only tried harder for a peace treaty. Don't give me this garbage, because that's what it is. In the day and age that we're talking about, the people that were in power on the Japanese side, yes, they were losing their power, because I mean the Japanese Navy were basically gone at this point. The Japanese Air Force was gone at this point. They didn't have any trained pilots anymore, and those they did, they were sending on kamikaze missions. It was a full out. It was war, and they weren't going to surrender as long as they could. And the nuke showed that they don't, because the holding saving grace for the Japanese was, we can hold them on the main island. We'll fight till last man, last breath. They will never take Tokyo. What the nukes did was show that they didn't need to do a land invasion. That city by city could disappear in a cloud of smoke with one bomb, one plane. One bomb, one plane. That's it. And that changed the game. Because up until that point, the argument could be made we could hold them off for a peace treaty here. We can get a major victory, because that was the doctrine of the Japanese. Right back to the Russian War. They have one big battle, and they hope to win that big battle, and then they can somehow get the victory. Well, the nuke denied them a big battle scenario. Because the United States, in theory, I mean, technically, probably not, because they only had 3 made, and it would have taken some time. However, right. However, sorry. However,
that third, they lost that third one too, didn't they?
No.
Oh, I thought they did.
No, the third one was. There's conflicting rumors on that one. One, it was in the air. There's always been the rumor that the third one was in the air, aimed for Tokyo at the time of surrender. It's not something that is ever talked about. It's not even confirmed. So that's like gray area conspiracy theory. Guy's been up too long, smoking Marlboros, talking about, yeah, the third bomb was in the air and we were going to blow the shit out of Tokyo. Um, so that's where that sits. The other was there was a concern that if they dropped the third one and there was still no surrender, the amount of time it would have taken to build the fourth nuke would have forced a land invasion.
Maybe my memory is failing. I thought there was some theory that the third one was lost somewhere in the Aleutian Island area.
That's
off
possible.
Of Alaska.
Yeah, it's possible. But I don't remember, and I don't want to say yes or no because I don't remember. I remember them. There was rumblings that it was to be. Okay, yeah. So Mountains of Elysium says the third one was lost near Tiana when a B-29 crashed transporting it. Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me.
I knew there was something like that.
Yeah, well, one of these days we're going to have to do a show on all the lost nukes that are still out there.
Now that would be interesting.
Like, there are 2 at the bottom of the Great Lakes.
Thomas Potts says Bird stole it.
Yeah. Bird of Prey did it.
That wouldn't surprise me. Kuroga stealing the nuke.
Yeah. But, no, so back to what I was saying. The amount of fallout that would have participated if a actual land invasion, boots on the ground in Japan, would have been enormous, and the Japanese knew it, and they hoped for it. Because, I mean, the more body count, even in today's military, the more body count you send home, the less will there is for that fight.
Yes.
Right? That's just the law of war. The more it's just, no, this is wrong. So get to the peace treaty table already. I'm sick and tired of our boys coming home in boxes, right? Vietnam was a good example of that. So that's what the Japanese were hoping for. The Japanese, long throughout World War II, held the belief the United States has the heart for war, but not the stomach. And that's what they were hoping on. An absolute, different outlook. So if they could get the United States to commit to a meat grinder, they could maybe somehow not win the war, but at least force to a favorable peace treaty. The nukes took that away because what it essentially told them is we do not need to invade. We can just sit back, drop these, and evaporate your cities one by one. We can do this all day. It was the message sent out. Technically, they couldn't do it all day, but
they didn't know that.
They didn't know that, and what they don't know, don't hurt them. Right? So, and Revan throws in a comment that I saw earlier about whether they should have nuked North Korea. No. Too close to China. That would have been, the fallout would have hit China, which would have, I think if a nuke would have been dropped during the Korean War, you would have seen World War III. Russia would have crossed into West Berlin, and it would have been the catalyst of other things. And I think by that time, Russia had the bomb. which means you could get a retaliation from Russia, or at least it was soon after that Russia had
I
it. 'Cause, I
think
mean,
I think it was 49 they detonated
yeah,
their first one.
yeah. So I mean, Russia's already got the bomb. So I mean, if the U.S. drops a bomb in North Korea, not only that, but the devastation to South Korea. Because that's the difference between a nuke and a regular bomb is the fallout doesn't just hit ground zero. Um, but anyway,
August
moving on.
29th, 49.
Yeah, so they've already got the bomb. So yeah, no, nukes would not be used because if nukes were used on North Korea, the potential of Russia firing in retort uh, would be a very real thing. And Chef Zilla is absolutely correct. MacArthur wanted to bomb China, which is why, because of difference of opinion between MacArthur and the president, and MacArthur not afraid to tell the president that he's an idiot and he should do what he tells him to, MacArthur got sent home by the president of the United States. But that's a whole nother story for another day.
Indeed.
So back to Japan, and I'm gonna try to wrap this up here because I gotta get my throat back. So dropping the bomb was an absolute necessity. If they were going to end the war in 45, the bomb had to go. They had to do the nuke. I don't think all the armchair quarterbacking in the world would have turned that anyway. And Mountains of Elysium, yes, I 100% agree with you that Truman was absolutely correct in sacking MacArthur. One of these days, real soon, we're going to have a MacArthur special because that guy went from the penthouse to the outhouse real quick. Oh Jesus! But
so many threads.
Yeah, definitely. That guy was one of the ones that went from the penthouse to the outhouse. But in the overall, I mean, the firebombing campaign that the United States had done up until that point, as Lady Mist had pointed out, wasn't working. It just wasn't. They needed something. We needed something to. We needed that shock factor, and we needed the war to end. Otherwise, the body count would have been horrendous on both sides, the Japanese and the American and Canadian and British, because that's a lot of things. That's a lot of things that a lot of people forget. Is it wouldn't have just been the United States. It would have been Britain, Canada,
all the allies.
All the allies would have been going into Japan. I mean, we were there at the beginning. The Canadians, the British, we were there at the beginning of the Pacific War. And also, I mean, as a joke question, I'll throw this in for Bird. Bird asks, should we have nuked the Soviet Union and all the hostile countries before anyone else got the bomb? No.
I told him that's a good topic for the What If series.
What if Truman had gone on a nuke 'em all theory? That was another one that, the poor bastard. He just gets into position, and he's got to go meet up with Stalin and Churchill, and he had no idea about the bomb or anything because his president kept him as far away from the briefing room as possible. All of a sudden, he's running everything. Yeah, poor bastard. Truman is the one president I felt the most sorry for in the entire world, out of all your presidents, because he got fucking shafted. But yeah. But in the grand scheme of things, um, the the dropping of the nuke shortened the war. The dropping of the nuke saved lives, and the dropping of the nuke saved territory because the Russians didn't get on a roll, and therefore the USSR was not as entrenched in China as they would have been had there been a full-out land invasion. So all in all, even with all the armchair quarterbacking, where they should have strived for peace, and the poor Japanese, that's the new quant launch, the poor Japanese. It ended a war that needed to end, and it was the better of two evils. And at the end of the day, the nukes had to fall in order to remove anybody that was in opposition to the surrender. After the second nuke, there was pushback on Emperor Hirohito, but at that point, I mean, they argue to this day now, and some of it's propaganda, some of it's true, but you can't really prove it. The argument now is that Emperor Hirohito wanted to end the war a lot sooner, but his military officials, and they've been demonized and made to be the big bad guys of the situation. And some of that was done on purpose coming out of World War II, that it was the military officials. Some of that was propaganda, and it's now taken as historical fact. But it was to remove, originally, the blame the military theory was done so that Hirohito could still be in power, so to speak, after World War II. The military had led them astray, blah, blah, blah. They needed a fall guy. Military happened to be the fall guy. So at the end of the day, I believe that dropping the nuke shortened the war. I believe that the nuke saved lives.
It did.
And it was absolutely the right call to make. Closing thoughts on this, Jeff?
I think the saving of lives was the big thing there. One thing that I think really pushed the Japanese to surrender was not only the nuke itself. I don't think the second one did that much in the decision making, but the Russian invasion of Manchuria, I think that really pushed. Yeah, I think that really pushed it. I mean, you had the combination of those two at the same time, and that ended the war then.
Yeah. All right. So with that, I'm going to say that the new show, the History with R&R Roundtable, should be debuting this Friday. We had a couple of technical difficulties last week, but cross our fingers, everything should be going ahead. So it'll be myself, Mark, the Infinitely Tired, and Jeff Franklin. We'll be doing a roundtable on D-Day this Friday. It'll be a video. It should drop around 9 o'clock in the morning on Friday morning if everything goes well. Over on Rambling Canuck, I have my Minecraft streams tomorrow and Thursday, 1 o'clock till 3:30ish. So if you want to join me tomorrow and hang out for a bit, that'd be awesome. The What If series will be carrying on this week on Rambling Canuck. And yes, Thomas Potts, the Oilers better lose. And yeah. Jets are up. Yeah, they blew a 4-1 lead. Idiots. Anyway, before I get distracted on hockey, but Thomas, just quickly, did you see that hit on the captain of Toronto? Ouch! That hurt. Oh, that poor guy. Oh, knee to the head.
Yeah,
Full
I
speed.
saw that too.
Ooh.
Ouch.
He's out indefinitely. And then the damn Toronto Sun and their stupid. The Toronto Sun is lucky they didn't get burned down. Toronto fans almost went psychotic because the Toronto Sun, which is the newspaper in Toronto, their headline the day after that game was Toronto's captain crunched. That was the headline.
Oh.
Yeah, that didn't go over well.
Yeah, I guess that's one way to describe it.
Yeah, that didn't go over well at all. All right, so with that said, I'm going to end this the same way that my best friend used to, and it's kind of become a tradition. So I know it's the afternoon, but oh well. Here we go. Thank you all for coming. And until next time, thank you and good night.